System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Thursday, July 31st. I'm Amin TMK alongside Emoja Lil Tanky Sumler. Emoja, hello, my friend. How has the week been treating you? How are you doing?
Man, we out there getting it. It's hot summer sun.
All day, every day. Climate change is here. Torrential downpours all over the planet. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
We had a 8.3 magnitude earthquake in Russia. See what I'm saying? Like in tsunamis that went all across the Pacific. For those of y'all that are not up on that. So if you have anybody out there, definitely give love, you know.
Yeah, I mean, earthquakes, I mean, those aren't really climate change. That just be happening, right? I mean, but still, I think it's important to acknowledge, maybe, who knows, the earthquake machines, right?
I mean, there's a difference between human-based climate change and climate change. You know what I'm saying? If a meteor hit the fucking earth, there's climate change, you know? Big earthquake, 8.3 out of 10. That's a huge,
that's enormous
huge earthquake, bro. Yeah, it can change climates for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely. Hope everyone is okay. Shockwaves throughout I'm just talking about
right, man.
Climate change, man-made climate change, not a meteor hitting the earth and wiping out the dinosaurs, which of course is climate change. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. This is what I want to talk about today. Let's talk about some lines being drawn in the sand right now. This week, Ursula von der Leyen, president of the European Union, and Donald Trump got together, made a little deal. I'm going to play this for us. This is Donnie J. Talking about the deal. I'm getting deals done.
Of all of the European countries, which I think I could say were essentially closed. I mean, you weren't exactly taking our autos, you weren't exactly taking our agriculture, and then you would have smaller things, but for the most part, it was closed. And now it's open. It's open for our companies to go in and do a good job with it. I think you'll like them. I think you'll like it. And we will, very importantly, they'll be investing a lot of money, but the military is a big number, but that's one number we're not determining. It's going to be whatever it is, but they're going to be purchasing hundreds of billions of dollars worth of military equipment. They're very important. They're going to purchase $750 billion worth of energy. So that's going to be great. And $600 billion worth of investments into the United States over and above what they have.
Okay, let's talk about this quote unquote deal. Looks like they're going to be, the EU is going to be investing into the United States, buying pretty much their energy from us. What is your kind of thoughts on this first kind of initial deal, as they call it?
So many thoughts, man. So many. So like the first thing I think about is remember what they're talking about when they're talking about the energy is compressed natural gas, of which America is like the leader in the world. But it's very expensive, very expensive. They were getting piped gas from the Nord Stream. It was much cheaper. Piped gas is always cheaper than transported gas, you know. But they're no longer allowed to buy that from Russia. So that already was like a big, conflict of interest. You can't buy the Russian oil, buy ours, which, by the way, costs way more. So there's that. You know, I think about the investments in the military, infrastructure. Like, this is a shakedown, bro. Like, it's just a shakedown.
There's really no other way to look at it.
Like, and I think about like when China ruled the world hundreds of years ago, you know, and what would happen is you would go and meet the emperor, you know, and you would kowtow and prostrate yourself. And, oh, my God, China's the greatest empire that ever has. And the empire would flush you, you know what I'm saying, with like gold and diamonds and tribute simply for acknowledging, right, The Americans are exactly the opposite. You grovel and you beg, and they hit you with tariffs, man. I mean, this is straight up tribute. They're demanding tribute from their friends, and they're putting sanctions on everyone that won't give them tribute. I mean, this is a good old-fashioned gangster shakedown. And there's no other way to look at it. $700 billion of investment in the United States. Why wouldn't the EU be investing in the EU? I mean, if you're going to spend $700 billion, right, you think that you would spend that to make your own companies competitive, right? But that's not what's happening. And they're giving a 15% tariff on top of that.
Anyway, after all of this, you're still getting a 15.
Right. And so, again, the real loser is the European people, European corporations, and the American people, because those tariffs mean that prices will be higher for Americans for every little thing that you get. Whether you're talking about smoked salmon from Nova Scotia, some lox, or, whether you're talking about French wine or anything that you might happen to get, parts for your Volkswagen, you know what I'm saying? That's going to be a 15% tax on top of that, whatever it is. So the brakes cost this plus 15 plus sales tax, right? So it's just taxes on taxes on taxes, which is funny, from people that claim to be against taxes. The only people that win in this are the American corporations. The other thing I want to say about this is it's not that Europe is shutting American products out of the European market. American products don't meet their regulatory standards. And because of that, they're blocked out. For example, red number 40 is in everything in America. That is listed as a carcinogen in Europe. So like foods that have that are barred from that market. It's not just like they woke up one day and was like, you know what, man, I don't want American companies to do good. American beef is shut out of Europe because the way that it is raised is incompatible with the minimum safety standards of European beef. American pork, I don't need to say nothing about American pork. I mean, how it's raised, right? So, it's not like these people hate American products. American products have been deregulated to the point of being unsafe. And that works in America because you've bought, the American government and you forced all that deregulation, but you didn't buy the rest of the world, right? Places like Japan are like, we don't really trust American beef. Places like Europe are like, mad cow disease, right? And so it doesn't make it on their markets. Genetically modified, all of those things, biogenetically all modified, not like natural selection, like, we took a
cross-pollination or something.
Right. We took an Angus cow when we bred it with a longhorn. No, we're talking about digital genetic manipulation. Like that kind of food is not allowed in Europe. That kind of food is barely even labeled as such in America. So when he's talking about you're going to like our products, that's what he means. He doesn't mean Farmer Joe that you knew with his 20 acres that makes strawberries. He means ADM, He means Monsanto. He means all, Bill Gates soy, right? Yeah. Like these billionaire farms, that have done all of this stuff that people just don't, they're not with it,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of, this right here is Ursula von der Leyen.
Always lying. Ursula, always lying.
Ursula, stay lying. I just want to read this for the podcast listeners. This is a tweet from Zuck Feinism. You already know. In 2021, the EU spent 35 billion euros, 38 billion in American dollars. Excuse me, I have to cough. Excuse me. On Russian gas imports, 35 billion euros on Russian gas imports 2021. This peaked at 85 billion in 2022 due to the high prices, obviously due to the special military operation, dropping down to 18 billion in 2024. The new deal, the new U.S. LNG deal Liquid natural gas. Is that LNG? Okay. Deal totals $750 billion over 3 years. That's $250 billion a year. Mind you, the highest they ever paid was $85 billion because of the special military operation. So 4 to 7 times higher annually than historical Russian levels. This is from Eurostat and Statista. So you know that it's on. This is Ursula, I guess, responding to that.
Divided into 3 years, so during his term, 250 per year. And indeed, we still have too much Russian LNG that is coming through the back door again to our European Union, and some Russian gas and oil still in the European Union, which we do not want anymore. We want to absolutely get rid of Russian fossil fuels. And therefore, it is much welcome to purchase the more affordable and better LNG from the United States. And there, approximately, our estimation is that we can do 250 per year over 3 years.
I mean, some things in there aren't making sense to me, my friend. More efficient, not true. Cheaper, obviously not true. Again, just sort of, I don't know, I guess kind of a gaslight.
It's hard sometimes to not look at Ursula von der Leyen as an American operative. I mean, if she truly, it's because she does not serve the European people. Again, these kind of decisions hurt European businesses that got rich off cheap fossil fuel. You know, it's destroyed the German auto industry. Volkswagen is 3 steps away from having to declare bankruptcy. You know, Porsche ended up having to sell the Volkswagen. I mean, these are supposed to be luxury car brands, and
you never thought would die. Yeah.
Right. I mean, and so that's consistently happening, you know, and then again, you're looking at the price of these things, and it's like you can absolutely see it is 3 to 4 times higher, sometimes 7 times higher. The other thing I would say is it's more vulnerable to disruption because, again, there is no pipeline from the United States to Europe. OK, that is put on barges and sent to Europe. Now, again, that doesn't mean that, they're going to be attacked, but it means they could be. You know what I'm saying? You can disrupt that flow in the event of a major world conflagration, which I feel like we're always very close to, especially with the language that's passing between the president and Medvedev, who was the former president of Russia. It seems like war could happen at any time. And so, like, again, if I'm von der Leyen, the thing I want always is as much neutrality as I can. I don't want to be involved in anything, right, that forces me to make a decision. Smart government would be having maybe 1/10 of the American LNG just to keep them as clients and 90% Russian because it's so much cheaper. You know, you can fuel the entire European economies. The last thing I will say is it's not the United States of Europe. OK, like it's the European Union, and it's more of a confederation. She speaks in ways that are just not true. It is verifiably untrue that Europe wants to be off of Russian gas. That is not true. Romania continues to use Russian gas, and their economy is based on it. Hungary with Viktor Orban and all of those guys, they're still deeply tied to to Russian gas. I mean, even Ukraine, up until last year, their entire financial wealth was predicated off theft from the EU money, right, and selling Russian petrochemicals back into Europe. Like, even as little as last year, the Ukrainians were still acting as a middleman for Russian energy, right? So, like, again, this is definitely war is a continuation of politics through other means. This is financial war. This is the American energy industry going to war with Gazprom and the Russian fuel industrial complex. You know, it's easier to think about it as BP and Exxon against Gazprom than it is to think about it as America versus Russia, because this is financial. and they're once again, even on top of that money that they're having to give to the United States, where good luck on where that's coming from, right? But two, it just doesn't help them. It really doesn't. It's more expensive. It takes longer to get it from the United States to Europe than it would to.
It destroys them.
Yeah.
Go ahead and put a bow on it. That's the end of Europe. There's really no way to. They were already struggling. They're already in debt. It was a huge extortion move. Let's talk about this extortion. Donald Biden or Joe Trump, whoever you want to talk about, because it's the same situation. Joe Biden famously said, "We will stop. We will stop the pipeline. No matter. We'll get it done. We'll stop it. Don't worry." Blew up. It was claimed that it was 5 Ukrainians on Conor McGregor's yacht. Okay.
One of which is Zelensky, by the way, the guy who was in Vogue making all them pretty pictures. You would never guess he was a war fighter. He looked like a little Ukrainian model. The little one where he was like kicked back. I'm like, wow, I guess they really is done with Zelensky. They already got him ready to go, man. Yeah.
So you have now, the context is crazy. They blew up the pipeline. They are now saying you can't go with Russia, which makes the absolute most sense for anybody in Europe. Obviously, the pipelines and infrastructure is already there. It's a clean way to transport it, and overall much cheaper for Europe. So it's a straight exploitation. This is what they always wanted. They wanted to make sure that Europe had to be subservient to the United States against Russia, and many of the upper management type people in Europe are afraid of Russia. And basically the United States, Europe, NATO is all fighting here against Russia using Ukraine as the proxy. Meanwhile, I want to show you this. They want to go to war with BRICS. Another strong arm deal. You want to talk about some strong arm deals? This right here, Trump announces massive trade deal with Japan. Also, they still get the 15% tariffs. Trump said that Japan will invest $550 billion into the United States, adding that the U.S. will receive 90% of the profits. He also said Japan will open their country to trade, including cars, trucks, rice, and certain other agricultural products. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba said that auto tariffs in Tokyo will be lowered to 15% shortly after the deal was announced. Japan's top trade negotiator, Roisai Akazawa said mission accomplished. So let's talk about this, because this sort of reminds me of the exact same the thing that happened to the EU, the United States consolidating their proxies, making sure that they know what it is. They have a big stick. They're pushing the tariffs. They're telling you invest in us. This kind of reminds me of when Japan sort of closed off to all foreign people, and the Americans and the Dutch were like, nope, going to open you right on up. So it looks like they got the can opener here right on Japan. Another deal that kind of deeply entrenches the United States with Japan, just like it did Europe. Any thoughts on this one, Tanky?
Yeah, once again, that's the end of the Japanese automobile industry. Like, it's too competitive right now to have 15% on top added to your Honda. You know what I'm saying? So again, right, this is making American automobiles have an unfair trade advantage. You know what I'm saying? It's like any like-based, car versus the Japanese car is now 15% more expensive, right? So of course I'm going to go with a Chevy. Of course I'm going to go with the Ford, and the Japanese auto industry is overwhelmingly dependent on the American market. This is what you do to your friends, right? You're destroying their industries. You're not making American industries more competitive. You're making them more complacent, because they get by. They get a 15% advantage now on any product that might compete with them out of America. You know, I mean, that's incredible. And it's not like those wins are going to be passed down to American workers. They're only going to go to the stockholders. These kind of wins that they're going to gain, they're only going to the people that are taking part in the profit, not the people that are actually creating the work, creating the value. You know, the stockholders haven't done anything to deserve this extra 15%, but the workers do, you know. And once again, this is just the fundamental way that the American economy is predicated.
Yeah, straight exploitation, and we exploit other countries. So let's take a look at this because people are tired. This is from Angelo Giuliano, and this is Apple starts closing stores in China. China market is too competitive for Apple. Unlike the free lunch that you just talked about, it enjoys in the West. Apple closing stores in China for the first time. The U.S. tech giant has been struggling with falling local sales, worsened by Washington's escalating trade tensions with Beijing. Just another way and another example of how the United States is losing in real time. And they don't want to acknowledge this. That's why they have to exploit people. How about this one? They don't like this at all. They don't want to see this at all. President Xi Jinping has done more for people in modern history than any other living world leader. Let's take a look at some of these, shall we? In 2012, GDP which we know isn't the best indicator, but GDP 8.5 trillion, 2025 41 trillion. GDP per capita 6,000 in 2012, 13,000 in 2025. Inflation in 2012 2.6, inflation in 2025 2.1. Gold reserves up almost 800 billion. Debt, basically the same, not gone up, not down. But guess what? Pensions from 400 yuan to 3,326 yuan. You want to talk about the reason why the United States has to consolidate all the why? Not the reason, but the reasons they are not why, but the reasons they are doing it is they need to consolidate. They need to get as much exploitation as they can because this is bad for the United States. And it's not even bad for the United States. It's bad for the people who are the United States has to be the global hegemon, which is just not possible. China is showing in every single metric. When you look at the receipts, Tanky, what do you see? You see change in the positive for the people of China, the military technology, their political influence, all above the charts. I mean, what does this mean for the United States when you see stuff like this from China?
The West is built and predicated off a fundamental belief that I feel like is a mistaken belief. And it goes back to it's this belief, right, that he who builds on the people builds on the mud, right? And that mentality is just, you know, but that's the opposite of the Chinese mentality, right? The Chinese mentality is, if you're building from the people, then you have everything. If you give all the money to some super billionaire who's a multinational, right? Look at Conor McGregor. How often is he in Ireland? Almost never. You know, he claims to be Irish, but he's almost never there, right? Look at all of these American hyper billionaires, you know, they don't have any undue loyalty or patriotism to America. Certainly not in the way that, you know, the wealthy did in the 90s, guys like Ross Perot, like, I'll put my money up to protect America. These guys don't even have their money in American banks. You know what I'm saying? So when you put all of that power, all of that money into those people will just go wherever they can get the best deal. The people don't do that. The people are the ones that love the country. The people are the ones that build the culture. You know what I'm saying? But unfortunately, that's just not the American or even the Western way, you know, and, you know, until people stop with this reverence for Machiavelli, right? Which is where that quote comes from, you know, he who builds on the people builds on the mud, right? and start looking at people as the true resource of a nation, this will continue to happen. I mean, the fact that their debt has only went up 1%, but their GDP has went up by an order of magnitude, that people's purchasing power has went up orders of magnitude, that he's eradicated homelessness in China. Look, this isn't me trying to glaze ye. These are the certifiable, verifiable facts. You can look at the numbers and see. You know what I'm saying? I mean, look at the fact that the pensions have went up an order of magnitude. You know what I'm saying? The gold went up. There's eight. It's 0.8 of a point up more for the gold reserves. You went from 3.2 trillion to 4 trillion in gold reserves. Inflation is down. GDP per capita is up. National GDP is up. Like, it's hard to act like this is the only country in the world that literally you can travel from point to point in a train as fast as you can on a plane. I mean, when you talk about China, it sounds like you're lying. You can Uber Eats, your food on the hyperlink, not the hyperlink, their high-speed train, and it'll be waiting for you at the next stop. You go in and you grab the food and you get back to your seat and you're traveling 400 miles an hour. That's a way to move people. Trains are a way to move people and logistics. Planes are a good way to move the wealthy. You know what I'm saying? And again, those are the priorities in America, is always overemphasizing the wealthy while making it harder and harder to achieve wealth. The American dream is just not something that happens. You go back and look at, shows in the 80s and the 90s, shows like what we're talking about, Family Matters. They own a house. They got 2 cars. The kids got cars. Even what was the one with Al Bundy? He owns his house. He's a shoe salesman, but he owns his house. His wife is essentially a stay-at-home mom. They're not living great, but they're not about to get kicked out. You know what I'm saying? Like, the American way of life is less. We live in a lesser status standard of living than we did in the 90s. And these are real indicators that the empire is in decline. GDP is up, but people's standards of living is down. And that tells you that all of that wealth is truly just aggregated at the top. If you're not a person that has $50 million invested in the game, you're not even a real player. You're barely a real person.
I mean, Elon Musk just went over his value of $400 billion. That doesn't happen in China. And usually when that type of wealth does happen, there's corruption behind it. And we know what happens when there's corruption from billionaires in China. And these are they look at these things as extreme measures. But when you're dealing with people who are enormous leeches, like God tier size leeches, I mean, what are you supposed to do? Millions of people die from capitalism. Millions of people die from the exploitation of the global South and the people that are there. And, we look at China and Russia and BRICS in general as, a pushback against, America's global hegemony. And, there really is no other way to look at it, in my opinion, and I think your opinion as well.
Counterbalances, right? And that's what's good for the people. The people always need options. It can't just be one way of life, one culture that's the predominant culture that sets the standards for what is acceptable, especially when that is a culture that is coming from a history of having cultural superiority and like their feelings and their expectations, right? Equality feels like oppression to a culture that is like that has come from that. The American culture is not a culture where you're happy when your neighbor gets good things, right? You're jealous. Oh my God, they got a Porsche. I only got a Corvette. I'm falling behind. It's not like, oh man, we all doing good. Nah, it's like they doing better.
It's a dog-eat-dog world, and that's what they're doing. They're creating that economic that economic violence against people to make them, kind of have to, kind of keep, the crabs in the barrel kind of thing, but crabs in the barrel are not people's natural habitats and so on and so forth. And I think that, it's not tough to tell when you see places, not just China, it's other countries as well. The United States, again, one of the only developed nations that does not have universal health care. And I think the point that you were making, or your point that you made me just kind of think of the intensity of American exceptionalism here. It's not that I don't like Americans and I don't enjoy my time in America. It's that we understand our place in the global world. Or global world, non-bred, but you know what I mean, on this planet. And, that time is unfortunately coming to an end, and people are tired of this. They are tired of the West. And right now the West knows that. That's why there's no carrots involved, only sticks. And there's no other way but to war, my friend.
Yeah, no, it's all straight Debo shit. Give me your shit. You know what I'm saying? Give me your shit. Even the ones that bow down. You know what the rate of the Philippines, what their tax rate was? What their 14%. This is a dude that has literally effaced himself. This dude is like on his hands and knees, Marcos, right? As long as his payoff is good, he don't care. Just like mommy, like daddy, like kid, and that's what Americans like,
But not a king, though.
He's not a king. Right,
he's not a king.
Right. He's not a dictator.
He's not a dictator, but for somehow Maduro is a dictator. Right. And this is the thing that we say with Americans and why it's frustrating. Like you got Marco Rubio coming out and saying Maduro is a dictator, the president of Venezuela, who just won an election last year. And you have people out there saying
we won a referendum, by the way.
Yeah. And you have Americans out here who are supposed to be like politically astute. And they're saying, oh, well, two things can be true at once. The elections can be fair and Maduro can be bad. I mean, what are you talking about, man? Like, please exit yourself from the American CIA narrative and realize that there is only one way to a global stability or a global peace, and that is the diminishing of the Western world, at least in terms of its desire to be hegemonic and dominate the rest of the world. China's tired, Russia's tired, Iran is tired, Brazil is tired, Venezuela is tired, North Korea is tired, and the list goes on. Anyway. Let's give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts. You can hit us up on our website, innercityleft.com. You can check out Fables, Foibles, and Other American Sins, book of poetry by Omojalo Tanki Sumler. Our music is available everywhere you find music. Just type in our names. Our patreon.com/innercityleft. We now, I believe, have over 100 members. That's so cool. That is so cool. You guys are so cool. And we want to tackle these issues because they are the most important to us and we think are the most important to the world, and geopolitics and class consciousness so necessary. And you guys are helping us do that. Like, subscribe, comment for the algorithms. Tanky, what did we miss? Final thoughts, feelings.
There was a brief little skirmish between Thailand and Cambodia, between the hereditary prime minister, whose daddy used to be the prime minister until he was cooed, against her uncle, right? The leader of the hereditary family in Cambodia, where the president of Cambodia was a guy who actually went to West Point. And
wow.
And in Thailand, her father, who really runs the country, was part of the Carlyle Group with the Bushes, right? Like, this is what you get when you sell out to America. Just this conflict forever, and you never build your people up. But the billionaires do good. The billionaires do good.
Yeah, the Marcoses of the world, the King Abdullahs of the world, they tend to be getting richer and richer. The Zelenskys of the world. Great point.
For now.
Yeah, for now. What's the point of money? Can't take it with you, We're commies, so what do we know? You know what I mean? I am Amin TMK for Omojalo Tanki Sumler. This is the Inner City Left broadcast.
System riding to the core. Yeah. city life.